maintaining exchange rate stability with a paro market premium below 30%. However, Zimbabweans are very cautious. Over the past 2 decades, citizens have endured multiple currency transitions from bearer checks to bond notes to RTGS balances and often eroded savings, but trust in local currency. And the country is navigating this new path now, the ZIG path. On the chase today, we are asking, what does this mean for Zimbabwe if it is to be successfully adopted? What deliberate confidence building measures is the RBZ implementing now to ensure monocurrency by 2030, as they're saying? And what do consumers think? What assurances rather are there to protect consumers when this does eventually happen? Our discussion tonight: ZIG as the sole currency, are citizens ready for the shift? And to discuss this in studio, I am joined by Persistent Skwanyanya, Monetary Policy Committee member, Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe; Moses Chihuri, an economic analyst; Phil Monchereni, Director, Corporate Affairs, Consumer Council of Zimbabwe; Blessing Nyatanga, an economist; and joining us virtually via Zoom later on in the discussion is Energy Mutodi, Chairperson, Budget, Finance and Economic Development. Gentlemen, welcome to the chase.
Thank you.
Now, let's get started and straight into it. The RBZ is committed to monocurrency by the year 2030. This is anchored on the ZIG now as a sole legal tender for domestic transactions. However, now Zimbabweans have endured multiple currency shifts, like I did mention, from bearer checks to RTGS balances to bond notes, and now there's the ZIG. Against this backdrop that we're painting, what deliberate confidence building measures are being implemented to ensure the longevity of the ZIG into the future? Persistence.
Thank you. So the question of ZIG, the monocurrency, is part of the broader reforms. The reforms which started in earnest in October 2018. And the monocurrency question is a currency reform question. And the central bank has been working over time to create the conditions for the monocurrency, but also other facets of the economy in the context of reforms. They have also been working to create the necessary foundations and conditions for a thriving monocurrency regime. Until last year, April last year, you may want to agree with me that the environment was unstable, but we have started to see stability in the economy. And I want to confess the feedback that I'm getting from the market is quite encouraging, in the sense that we're getting positive feedback about stability and the progress that we're making so far on the stability front, but importantly, about the promise of permanent stability. On another note, there's also some concerns that the market is raising, and which I also see as encouraging, to the extent is a feedback that the central bank or monetary authorities should take with a view of coming up with permanent solutions to our current question. Now, importantly, because the environment has been generally stable, which is the key to a monocurrency regime, but this stability, one would want to question whether it's not fragile, or whether this stability is here to stay, which speaks to the question you asked me, what the central bank has been doing to ensure that we have got permanent stability in the economy. Importantly, is the structure of the currency that should anchor the monocurrency regime, which is the ZiG, in that it is a gold-backed currency. In that, and in line with that, the central bank has embarked on a reserve accumulation strategy, and which reserve accumulation strategy is bearing fruit. I think at the time of introduction of the ZiG, we had total reserves of around 276 million in terms of precious minerals, mainly gold and foreign currency. These reserves have now gone up to, as at June, 731 million dollars.
And persistence, these reserves are enough to ensure confidence
These
in the
reserves
currency.
are enough to ensure convertibility of the currency. And current stability is a function of its convertibility,
Okay.
which has been the biggest challenge in the past.
Okay.
So you can walk into a bank with a foreign invoice and get that invoice paid out.
Okay. Joining us now via Zoom, like we did mention earlier, is Enijim Todi. Honorable, good evening. Okay. I'll just pose the question in case you can hear us but not yet able to give a response. Persistence was just going or taking us through what they're doing as the RBZ to ensure the confidence in the currency right now as we now build up to want to say we want a monocurrency by 2030. What is your standpoint from where you stand? I don't think we do have this sound. Honorable, we can't hear you. Can you please unmute your mic so that we can hear you? Okay. While he does that, while you unmute your mic. Okay. I think now. Yes, now we
You
can.
can hear me now.
Yes, you can proceed.
Yeah, so issues to do with the currency are issues that we give to the executive. They are a prerogative of the executive to determine which currency they want to use. But in Parliament, we are responsible to in the lawmaking process. However, as a budget committee, we have had consultations with the stakeholders as to the currency that is favorable to business. And I'm sure the stakeholders have been insisting that they would want the United States dollar to continue beyond 2030, since it has managed to eradicate certain risks related to the exchange rate and so on. However, realizing the point that there's no economy in this world which is developed without its own currency, we as a committee on budget, finance, and economic development, we would want at some stage the country to adopt its own currency in order for it to be in full control of the monetary policy. And we also believe that that is the only way that we can develop as a country, run our own economy without external shocks coming from devaluations of the currency that we'll be using as our anchor currency. So what we are worried about only is the timing of the exit from the multiple currency system. We want a clear roadmap by the Reserve Bank and the monetary authorities and fiscal authorities to pinpoint that it's such when such features are now in our economy, such as banking sector, such as a wide use of the local. At the current moment, we actually have the United States dollar circulating it than the local currency. Would not allow us to then introduce a fully blown ZIG currency. So we want to migrate, we move slowly but surely and ensure that the usage of the local currency is increased. There's also promotion of that usage. The quantum of the money is also increased. The availability of the money, again, of the ZIG is also increasing on this, guaranteed in all corners of the country. At that point, we can then say, let's have a monocurrency. But as it is, if we continue like this, let's say we are in 2029, and the distribution of the ZIG currency is still limited as it is, and there is still a high prevalence of the usage of the United States dollar, I don't think as Parliament will be able to authorize such a thing to happen. Thank you very much.
Honourable, thank you for that. What he poses are very important and pertinent questions to be answered. For example, are the fundamentals in place to drive towards a monocurrency by 2030? Persistence, we'll come back to you so that you can answer some of the things that he's been posing. But gentlemen, this is the discussion we have. Monocurrency by 2030. What are your thoughts? I'll start with you right here because you're in my direct line of view.
Thank you so much. As consumers, as the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, we are for de-dollarization. But we are saying as we maneuver towards a monocurrency, let's get some things correct, as the Honorable Minister has just said. To say in the past, we have had such initiatives, but there were no successes. Consumers still remember the 2007-2008 hyperinflationary period, among other issues that we have made reference to say we are still trying to copy from the challenges that we faced in the past. Have we addressed some of the mistakes that we have encountered in the past, especially now? So that everyone is on the same page with the central bank. But in terms of us having, as a nation, having our own currency, granted, we all want that. As a sovereign nation, we should have our own currency, and it will, like I rightly said, it will give the monetary authorities authority to manage their monetary policy. But is everyone on board? We want everyone to be on board, especially when it comes to effective communication. For your own information, as the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, we were in Gokwe Nembudzia 2 weeks ago. The chiefs and the elderly, they were saying, of course, it was an engagement exercise that we do with regulatory authorities. We had the RBZ, we had Port Trust, we had Consumer Protection Commission. But some of the issues that were constantly being asked by the communities out there is that, yes, RBZ, we are happy, we have the ZIG. But if we were to tell you that we are yet to get a hold of the ZIG, you'll be shocked.
So that's actually going to be my question, that you were down there.
Yeah.
How did you see the usage of the ZIG in those parts of the country?
In terms of transacting in shops, yes, they do accept both currencies. But the question was, we don't even know the color of the ZIG. Beginning of the year, we were in Brunapeg, Matsau. They're actually using the rand. But it's not surprising, especially the border areas. Generally, they do that. The chief in that area, I think it was his first time to get a hold of the ZIG currency. Their message to the RBZ was that, can you do what you used to do in the past, to say when you introduce a new currency, you are all over the show, so that everyone is on board. You communicate effectively so that we are all on board when these new initiatives are undertaken.
So we're talking of introducing a monocurrency in a country where the currency itself we want to introduce has not even fully penetrated the people who are supposed to use it. Moses, what's your take on the issue of monocurrency?
Yeah, thank you. From an objective point of view, I think it's the good thing to do, but we need to underline the fundamentals that need to be ticked before we introduce it. As a country, we definitely need our own currency. This is like the sixth attempt as a country to trying hard to introduce our own currency. So as industry, we do agree with the bigger picture of introducing our own currency. But what is it that needs to be done? If we are talking of 2030, That's 60 months away. It's not like a very long period. It's only 60 months away. So we need to ask ourselves, why do we need the USD? What are we using the USD for? Because I don't believe the population really care whether we're using the USD, we're using the rand, whatever. They want a currency to use to trade. So if we are going to look at the import bill, what is it that we are paying with our USD? But do we really need to import that? So broadly speaking, I agree with my fellow colleagues here to say we need our own currency. There is no sovereign state that thrived while they are using another foreign currency. If you were to look at, for instance, the issue of Gokwe Nembudzia, where people are saying, we want the hard currency, we want the bond notes, or sorry, the ZIG notes. Maybe this is an opportunity for us as a country to innovate. Why do we really need to spend money on printing? Are we not there where we are supposed to be using our EcoCash, our mobile money, something like that? So coming to your question to say, what is our position on monocurrency? My answer will be, let's look at where we are using our USDs. I looked at the import bill as it March 2025. We used something like $780 million to import. And what are we importing? At the top, there were cereals and oils. As a country, I think we need to make deliberate moves to stop the importation of maize. As a country, if we stop the importation of maize, I think we are saving something like 10%, which is $78 million, by just making sure that we produce our own maize, we produce our own soya. If you look at that again, the import bill as at April 2025, we exported 45% of our exports was gold, semi-processed gold, right? Imagine if we could just add value on our gold. How much money are we going to be getting? If you go below the gold, there's tobacco. Imagine if we could value add our tobacco, that would actually going to give us more money. So my answer to the monocurrency issue, let's look at the fundamentals. Once the fundamentals are correct, you realize that no one will say no to monocurrency. When I was in school, okay, for me, I started seeing the US dollar when I was in high school. I didn't know what a US dollar was looking like. Why do I need a US dollar? Why does my son need a dollar to go and buy freezes, jiggies? For what reason? So I agree with the fact that we need to go for our own currency. But before we do that, let's address this issue of confidence. This is the sixth time.
Now, Moses, I want to bring you back to something you said when you're giving your response. The matter of why do we keep printing money when we can now make use of other mobile money applications like EcoCash, for example, like you did mention. Are you saying now we should be moving into a cashless economy if we are to be a monocurrency economy?
Definitely. If we are to ask ourselves, what is it that I can do with mobile money? I should be able to board my comp with mobile money. I should be able to buy my food with mobile money. I should be able to pay for my school fees with mobile money. So why do I really need to keep cash in my pocket? If you go to other countries, they are closing more and more bank branches because they've realized that the economy has gone cashless, right? But on the other hand, as a country, we are still saying monetary authorities print money. So someone is going to be queuing on a bank to get money, right? To go and buy some groceries from a supermarket. Why can't you just go to the supermarket and swipe or use EcoCash? The reason being, there are some costs associated with using mobile money. It brings us to the 2%, where whenever I'm going to swipe, I'm going to be charged 2% with a minimum of $4. Imagine. So at the end of the day, if we address those fundamentals, you shall realize that as an economy, more and more people will be keen to keep that money in the bank.
And now, Blessing, I'll come to you now. You've heard the discussion. What is your take? You're an economist.
I think at the very apex of these fundamentals is the issue of import cover. I think this is quite a very important and imperative topic that we cannot overlook in our roadmap to the ZIG. And talking about import cover, I think as it stands, our position is very precarious. Because I'm looking at from December 2024 to date, our average monthly import has been ranging from, say, 750 million to about 800 million. And in essence, that means we actually need 2.5 billion foreign currency reserves to have a healthy import cover, which is an ideal 3 to 6 months import. So as it stands, that is a very precarious position, and it is very imperative for the Reserve Bank to continue the accumulation of foreign currency reserves, because these actually ensure that we've got a healthy import cover. In other words, it means that the country is able to meet its external obligations using foreign currency reserves. So I think it is quite imperative, it is quite important for the Reserve Bank to continue this accumulation as we prepare for the monocurrency. I think without that in place, it may be difficult to actually have a full de-dollarization position.
Now, one thing that I keep hearing is an issue of a roadmap, a plan. Do we have a plan, for instance? Is there the proper roadmap? Energy Mtoli earlier did mention something about, do we have a proper plan?
The roadmap is going to be announced as the NDS2 is launched in November this year. But reading from what is happening on the ground, the monetary authorities have already identified what needs to be done. He is talking about the import cover of 3 to 6 months. Yes, it's a target that the monetary authority have given to the market, that as we get to point of a monocurrency, we should be in that space. But as it is currently, we're using the reserve money cover because we're still in a multiple currency regime. But with the reserve money cover, we are very comfortable with the reserves that we have as they cover the reserve money, ZIC reserve money, and the total reserves. But at the current reserves of 731, given where we're coming from, that is 276 million, the pace is quite encouraging. It's unsurprising. By year end, we should be hitting about $1 billion or so. But if we get to that level, then good for us. And the 2.5 billion is talking about is not a very difficult target given the rate at which the central bank is accumulating the reserves. But reserves alone are not enough to support the currency or to produce the conditions we want for permanent stability. Yes, we have stability. Since the beginning of the year, our currency has been generally stable with narrowing premiums, parallel market premiums. In some cases now, I think below 20%, thereabouts, but with very low levels of month-on-month inflation. But you want that to transform into permanent stability. And for us to have the permanent stability in the economy, as I have indicated, some of the issues are beyond economics and finance. But as far as the monetary authorities are concerned, I think we're moving in the right track. But we need support, obviously, from other facets of government. Treasury being the biggest player in the market is expected to play a key role in respect of the wide use of the local currency. And we have already seen initiatives from Treasury that are encouraging. As it is a journey, we don't expect that tomorrow the conditions are achieved. We are in a very long journey given where we're coming as an economy, but the pace is now encouraging. And we think at an appropriate time, we should be able to look back with a smile and say, yay, we came a long way, but we have arrived. And we are very much confident that with the pace we are moving, we will be able to arrive to a monocurrency space. There are issues that have been pointed out, which I need to clarify. You have pointed out that you can't talk of a currency, monocurrency, in a short space of time of 60 months when that currency is not readily available. Yes, I can give explanations to say, the currency is available, but there could be broken transmission mechanism. But if the market's perception is, despite what the explanations, the numbers that I can give you, if the market's perception is the currency is not available, then we have to deal with that perception that it is not available. But in terms of explaining why the currency is available, why I'm saying the currency is available, is the central bank has quite often been communicating to the market about availability of ZIG. And that ZIG should be available at banks. But banks also work with the demand from the market. Clearly, there could be a broken transmission mechanism. Unsurprisingly, the central bank had to intervene with the Home Link initiative, where the ZIG is now being distributed through Home Link channels.
Before you go further, I just want to find out real quick if any one of you on the panel have any idea if people have been able to access ZIG currency through that platform or through that mechanism.
So my issue is they may not have been able to access. I don't want to address or to say they have when they have not. But I'm saying if that is the perception, we may want to deal with that perception.
You know why I'm asking this persistence?
Yes.
It's the fact that we might be mentioning it and saying the central bank decided to do ABC, but it might have just been theory. And realistically, it might not have been implemented.
Yes.
Just the perception, like you're saying, to say they are doing something, when in actual fact, they were not doing anything. Now, gentlemen, have any one of you gotten to hear if anyone is accessed ZIG through the Home Link platforms? Any one of you?
I think what we need to do is we need to give the commendation to the monetary team. Where they've done well, let's appreciate that. I think the first thing in the journey to de-dollarization or to monocurrency is the stability, which they've done fundamentally very well, right? Then if you come to the issue of coins, notes, and other stuff, as an economy, I don't believe we can be 100% foolproof. We can have some limitations here and there. If you are to ask the 5 of us here to say how many of us have got a bond note or a bond coin, or sorry, a ZIG note or a ZIG coin, you might be shocked none of us have got a ZIG coin, right? But in the phones, in the bank, we do have. I've seen some pockets in town where you can see the Homelink guys there trying to distribute the money. But to me, it's not a solution. What we need to do is to find a way where we have an ecosystem that doesn't require the notes, that doesn't require the coins. Right now, we've created an ecosystem which still requires the use of the coins, the use of the notes. We need to come up with a way where we say, you know what, we don't need the coin. We need to go paperless. We are a learned country. If you go to other countries, you may realize that Zimbabwe is far ahead of most of these so-called big guys in the economy, in the global economy. So I'm encouraging that the RBZ need to come up with a way where they can come up with an ecosystem that doesn't want the use of the coin, the use of the notes. But those things are being printed at a cost. They're not coming for free, at a cost.
Now, I want us to now shift our focus to talk about the feasibility of this monocurrency considering the past failures. But Blessing, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I wanted to say something on the issue of supply of the ZIG. I don't think supply is really the problem. I actually work at Homelink myself, and I've got empirical evidence of the figures. I think there's been a good supply of the ZiG. But I think there is still an issue of public confidence, which is what the government, through the RBZ, in collaboration with the Minister of Finance, they need to work on the issue of public confidence. Because the supply is there, but are many willing to actually use the ZiG, given that most of our transactions are in the US dollar. So I think there has to be more work done on ensuring public confidence of the ZiG. I'll take you back to April 2024 when the ZiG was introduced, and on September 2027 there was a 43% devaluation of the ZiG. I think obviously there was a turbulence as far as confidence is concerned. So going forward, as we are also working on the roadmap to monocurrency, I think it remains very integral, it remains very imperative to ensure that the public is confident that this is a stable currency, and this is a currency that will not lead to losses from a business perspective as well as a consumer perspective.
Now, persistence, I think in your response, we're now leaning towards the question I was going to ask next, but I just want to now go to Honorable on Zoom and just ask, considering the fact that there have been past failures before, what is there in place to ensure that the same failures do not happen again? Have the lessons really been learned?
We have learned our lessons from the time of the Reserve Bank Governor, Dr. Gideon Governor, where I think we reached some trillions, quadrillions, and so on. And we don't want to go back to that kind of situation. I'm sure we have benchmarked with several countries. Right now, we are in Nigeria. There is a budget committee trying to also benchmark on currency issues and things like that. We will find they are still using notes, of course. There's the gentleman who was saying that we must be paperless. But of course, the feasibility of such a paperless situation, given intermittent telecommunications or online services or IT services, may be a problem, because you find in the rural areas there they cannot really be paperless. They need the physical cash. If you also benchmark with China, they are still using the physical money. So there's a time when we need that physical money. Although we can say maybe 60% of our transactions are are online, but we still need the physical money. So the lessons that we have learned is that we will not want as a country to go back to a highly volatile currency where the exchange rate can change very rapidly. We are very much in support of the current monetary system where the demand supply is tightened. In fact, this is one of the most successful governors whom we've had, is to try to make sure that the currency does not fly and become useless and rejected by the people is what happened. So we're not going to go back there, but what we're insisting on is a roadmap to ensure that there is manufacturing of products, because what then gives value to our currency, I believe, is the capacity for us to consume what we manufacture for ourselves, so that we don't have much demand on foreign currency. We would want to reach a situation where fuel, which is used in Zimbabwe, should be bought in the local currency. So the usage of our money, as long as we are not using our money to buy fuel and other very important things, it means that our people will still want to prefer to use the US dollar. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is that we want to increase the usage of our local currency. Then we should get to a point where our money is used in almost every we use as a country, except imports, may say medicines and so on. Reach a situation where our fuel, our major services and commodities are being traded in the local currency. At that stage, we can then introduce the monocurrency.
Now, before I'll go now and ask the same question to you, Persistence. The Honorable mentioned something that I was going to touch on, the issue of perception, like you were saying earlier. The RBZ has come up with a hashtag. Hashtag ZIG means business. But the same ZIG they're saying means business. It's not buying fuel, like the Honorable is saying. You can't go and take a passport and pay for the pay ZIG for it, car registration, etc., etc. You really cannot use the local currency. But then, how then are we saying the ZIG means business? And how are we integrating that to say we want to build a monocurrency by 2030 when at the current moment it's not doing what it is supposed to be doing?
Thank you. I guess that's the essence of the discussion here today, which is the de-dollarization roadmap. It is indeed a roadmap in that it specifies what needs to be done and how that is sequenced. We're using the ZIG for other uses in the economy, except for the two critical areas that you have pointed out. And for a reason, we want to acknowledge the fact that we're coming from a very unstable environment, and at the peak of that instability, I think at the center of that were fewer challenges. And because of that, we also need to be overly cautious about the roadmap, about how we treat fuel in this roadmap. That is, be it as it may, I think the roadmap will spell out to say, how are we going to treat fuel going forward? But I can give you an example. Treasury has already announced measures for QPDs, corporate taxes, to be payable 50% in the local currency in ZIG, including for fuel players. What that means is, whether you like it or not, to an extent, you will have to sell your fuel in ZIG, and that will also inform the demand for the ZIG. Let us assume that sometimes in the future, the Treasury will also announce an increase in the proportion of QPDs payable in ZIG, maybe to 75%. What happens to the fuel sales in ZIG, and what happens to the demand for ZIG? Let's also assume that maybe Treasury comes up tomorrow announcing duty for fuel in ZIG, maybe starting with 10%, then 20%, 50%, and 70%. That's how I envisage the roadmap. That's the essence
those are your
of the
assumptions.
roadmaps.
Okay.
We have not yet gotten there, but I think the roadmap will spell out what needs to be done at what point. And that's the whole essence.
So now we're talking about this essence. Now, Philman, I want to now hear from you. We've talked about the failures of the RBZ to do the monocurrency from time immemorial.
Sure.
The latest and fresh in mind, the 2019 year, where that tried to happen.
Also giving them credit for the stability colleagues have made
Of course,
reference.
we're not taking that away from them.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
Yeah.
we want to be realistic and talk about if this implementation is actually going to happen the way that they envision and assume it might happen.
Yeah.
What is your take? Do you think the fundamentals, like they're saying, are enough, or they are what we need in order to introduce this monocurrency?
The long and short of my answer will be the RBZ, they need to walk the talk. They need to walk the talk in the sense that they can't be saying one thing and acting the other. The Honorable Mtodi has made reference to the issue of fuel and passport. Granted, the RBZ authorities are in the picture in terms of why those products are being sold in USD. But does a Gogoin Jerera Zaka know all those things? So communication then becomes key. It's important that we are all on board when these things are being done, so that no one is left behind. As long as confidence, consumers lack confidence, I think perception will still continue. Yeah, that's my take. But just to add on the issue of stability, as the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe produced what we call a Formula 6 basket. Beginning of the year, I think the basket has been hovering around 21,000 January to March, and then 20,000 from June to up to now, which is something that we must give credit to the authorities in terms of managing inflation and managing to maintain that stability. But we need everyone on board. Let's have everyone on board. I think that's important for us.
Now, in terms of getting everyone on board, critics will argue that a large segment of the population has now started relying on getting their salaries in US dollar currencies. What will it take for the RBZ to convince the workforce that, you don't need the US dollar portion of your salary? The ZiG is enough for you. You can transact with it. You can do everything with it. What will it take to convince them that this is what we need? Because for us to then achieve a monocurrency, these are the people that are using the US dollar. They're the same people that will use the same ZiG currency as a sole currency.
It takes policy. Policies that increases the use case for the ZiG, policies that increases or that cause wider usage of ZiG, and more importantly, at the center of that, the key player in that regard is the ministry, is the treasury, is government. Government being the biggest player in the market, at market power of above 70%, should be able to influence the direction, should be able to influence the demand for the ZiG, and therefore the acceptability of ZiG in the market.
Moses, do you think people will warm up to getting their salaries in just the ZiG?
Yes and no. I think there is what we call the signal hypothesis, to say if you want to get a response, you put some information into the market and you get a response. There are a lot of good things that are being done in the country, but sometimes maybe the communication is what is lacking. I will give you this on authority to say, right now, if you have got a foreign invoice that you need to pay, and you have got ZiG in your account, it doesn't take 48 hours for RBZ to settle that invoice. You've got ZiG, you want to import from China, you want to import from wherever you want, and you want US dollars. It doesn't take you 48 hours to get that, right? And that information, is it in the public domain? Sometimes not, right? Then we have got other areas that I believe we definitely need to have confidence to say, you can actually charge your product in ZiG. Come to us. But the biggest problem now is, let's take for instance a school. If they accept 100% of their school fees in ZiG, right? But they still have got buses that they need to run in USD, which are where you're supposed to go to Total or whatever, the service station, and pay in USD. But the Reserve Bank, they're only meeting invoices for external. Until such a time where they will say, okay, guys, even if it's a local invoice, we can still satisfy that. For now, we can't. So that brings that person to a problem. Or say, you know what, if I accept ZiG, it's not going to happen. But broadly speaking, we are killing ourselves. The economic actors is us, right? So at the end of the day, we are just inflating. If you look at from my brother from Consumer Council, the reason why the basket size is going down, previously the way businesses were pricing their product, they did put an allowance. What if the rate changes tomorrow, right? Now that we have gone for a year with the rate actually coming down, look at what is happening in supermarkets right now. Many supermarkets are promoting to say, you know what, buy one, get one for free. Everyone is promoting. The prices are coming down, which is a positive. So we need to connect the dots. All the dots. As my good brother Persistent said, the buying power is with the government, right? So the government, if they believe this is going to work from a policy point of view, let them pay their employees in ZIG.
Now, Blessing, I would come to you, but then there's a specific question I would like for you to answer. But first, I'll get the opinion of the Honourable. Salaries, pensions, social welfare payments are the most sensitive ones when it comes to currency reforms. Many cry foul to say, my pension was going to be paid in this money, now this is happening, now I've lost this much, and they're crying foul about it. How then are we going to ensure that those groups are not affected? How are we going to protect them when the monocurrency does eventually happen, Honourable?
Okay. Yeah, I think once a monocurrency is adopted, then it means that salaries, pensions, they have to be paid in the local currency or in that monocurrency. As we all agree that it's a good idea to eventually have our own currency so that we are in full control of our monetary policy. And we can also dictate the pace at which we develop our country. So we want some representations from pensions organizations. Pensioners were very much worried that they lost a lot of money when there was a changeover from one currency to another, and they haven't recovered. So it will be very important, it will be pertinent and very critical for Parliament to advise the executive at that point when we want now to move to a monocurrency to ensure that scientific calculations are made so that people do not lose value as a result of the transition from the use of the US dollar to the local currency. So we will make sure that at that point in time, Parliament then takes its role to ensure and make a fair transfer of the US use of the US and I'm sure we are to consult with the reserving governor such that he will together with the Minister of Finance, give us a roadmap, a clear roadmap, and they will also give paint a picture as to how they will deal with those funds, such as pension funds and the other reserves that have been kept in US dollars. You find that companies keep their money in US dollars as their reserves. And if you now are supposed to change to a monocurrency, to a local currency, companies will also be concerned that what if the currency, once you put a monocurrency, then you convert to a certain rate, then the rate falls and the companies lose their huge amounts of money. So it's something that we will need to agree and to have a clear roadmap, as I've said earlier on, so that no one is prejudiced as a result of the transition. Thank you very much.
Now, from what I hear, it's a chain reaction. You change the currency now, everyone is affected. Everyone stands to lose something. Excuse me. Now, Blessing, what I wanted to now pose to you and ask is to say, do you really think people will be protected when the time comes to say, let's switch to a monocurrency? Do you think the lessons have been learned enough to say they now know what to do and what not to do when they change to monocurrency?
I think if the fundamentals are in place, then the people will be protected.
Now, which fundamentals? Everyone keeps saying fundamentals. I'm sure there's a listener who's listening and saying, what do you mean when you keep on saying fundamentals?
Okay, we've talked about foreign currency reserves. Those always need to be sufficient for a monocurrency to be in place. I gave you a figure of 2.5 billion, given our current imports, which are ranging from 700 million to about 800 million per month. So an import cover of foreign currency reserves of 2.5 billion may be good as foreign currency reserves. And then you also have the issue of increasing our exports. I think we've been discussing that we are actually not exporting as we should. So as long as we boost our production, increase our exports, ensure that exports are always more than our imports, those fundamentals actually play a crucial role in ensuring that the ZIG is stable and that people will be protected.
Now, as we almost get to the end of our show, let's talk about something else that might be a sore topic for some or most people. While the central bank has really emphasized that the transition is not a redenomination exercise, some citizens worry that the exclusive use of the ZEG for local transactions may come with some restrictions in terms of foreign currency usage and the conversion of diaspora remittances into the local currency. No one wants anyone to touch their money. If it's sent to me in rands, I want to use it in rands. If it's sent to me in US dollars, I want to use it in US dollars. I do not want the bank changing the money that I'm getting from the diaspora to the Z currency. Now, persistence, can you explain how you intend to strike a balance now between asserting monetary sovereignty and still maintain an open, investor-friendly environment that does not restrict foreign currency inflows?
Thank you. I think the most important thing is stability. As long as we have stability, all the concerns of the markets are taken care of. Stability means convertibility of the ZIG. You can easily convert your ZIG to foreign currency, which speaks to the maintenance of the foreign currency accounts and assurance that the central bank has already given to say the foreign currency accounts will remain foreign currency account. If you earn your foreign currency, it goes into a foreign currency account and it remains as such. Mm-hmm. And if you want that to be converted to the local currency, you can go through the interbank market to get that converted into your local currency. Mm-hmm. I think the central bank is giving that assurance or those assurances. Mm-hmm. Coming back to the issue of the remittances, diaspora remittances, but also other remittances. The remittances have always been in the exchange control regulations treated as free funds. And I don't see the roadmap will give us how they are going to be treated, but I don't see, as it is now, the rationale for changing that position, because those have always been treated as free funds. Mm-hmm. In terms of allaying the fears about a monocurrency regime, I think the most important thing is to satisfy the market about the conditions that are supportive of a sustained stability of the local currency. Which conditions we have been talking about in terms of the reserves themselves, but also in terms of dealing with the confidence issue, which are the soft issues, but which I can pick from the discussion that they are also very important. Whilst we think that certain things are working the way they should be working, or we expect they are working, but if the perception out there is that the things are not working, we need to deal with that perception, because if not addressed, perception is actually the reality that rules. Mm-hmm. So it's an area that I think the central bank is going to be looking at very closely, but also credibility of the central bank. I'm very happy with the progress we have made so far, which speaks to the credibility of the central bank. They've managed to walk the talk, and we are happy with that. And it also gives us promise of that continuing into the future, which also supports a stable monocurrency regime. Admittedly, there are concerns to deal with. We are getting into a very sensitive area, and we need to be very careful about the messaging. We need to be very careful about the communication. We need to be very careful about the subject itself, especially given where we're coming from as an economy. Mm-hmm. But the monocurrency is what is good for the economy. That's why all economies use the monocurrency, except those that have gone through some form of challenges as us.
So now we are about to round off, so I'd like now to just keep our responses a bit shorter so that we do not overlap. Philman, we're talking about now creating an environment that is investors friendly, even when we're using monocurrency, because monocurrency means just the use of the ZiG, and we do not want any foreign currency diluting our ZiG. How then will we ensure that our investors don't shy away, or we don't push them away?
I think in short, you know what, I'll still go back to what colleagues were saying earlier on to say the confidence deficit, which has been which has been a big issue. Once it's in place, I'm sure everything will fall into place. That will be my short response.
Moses.
I think we need to address one fundamental issue called production. We really need to address production. There was a time that retailers were going to RBZ to say, allow us to use a rate that we feel like using, and they were pushing back. There was a time, now they've said you can use 50, you can use 100. But what has happened in the market? No one is using those rates. The economic fundamentals are actually pushing people to price their products correctly. So we don't need to have this controlled environment where you say, I produce my maize and you tell me it's going to be sold at this price. Allow people to just produce maize and sell maize.
So a free market.
Free market.
Okay.
Then we'll be having maize in abundance. Then we can save money for the RBZ. Why are we still importing maize and soybeans? Imagine.
Blessing.
Yeah, I think I will concur with the gentleman that favorable policies is all we need to ensure that the climate favors the investor and the climate promotes the emergence of businesses.
Now I'm just going to ask a no or yes question. Are you with or are you against the usage of the ZiG? Is it yes or no? ZiG, yes, no?
ZiG, yes.
It's a
Moses,
yes.
it's a yes?
It's a yes, definitely.
Persistence?
ZiG supported.
Okay, so a resounding yes from the gentleman on the panel,
Yes,
as long as we address what needs to be addressed
sure.
going forward. I would like to thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on The Chase tonight. A big thank you to my gentlemen who were joining me on tonight's discussion. Persistence Kwanyanya, Monetary Policy Committee member, Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe; Moses Chiwiri, economic analyst; Phil Monchereni, Director, Corporate Affairs, Consumer Council of Zimbabwe; Blessing Nyatanga, an economist; and joining us virtually via Zoom, Dr. Energy Mutodi, Chairperson, Budget, Finance and Economic Development. I've been your host, Faith Nyaude. Good evening and enjoy the rest of your viewing.